Hi, I'm Anna Scaife from the Jodrell Bank Centre for Astrophysics at the University of Manchester, and today I'm going to be talking about what is data science. So one of the first things that people should realise is that data science is not new. We often talk about it like it's a new thing because it's become, a buzzword on the internet, but data science has been around for a long time. One of the things that has changed is that business has suddenly realised the financial value of data science. And that has led to a massive increase in the recognition of data science and the technical skills required for data science. And it's also led to the emergence of data science as a career in its own right. Um, and that's really something that's happened over about the last decade. And it's led to the idea of the unicorn. Now, the unicorn is, in principle, a mythical beast. And that's why they say that the perfect data scientist is a unicorn, because the perfect data scientist doesn't exist. But at the same time, everyone is searching for unicorns because everyone wants to employ the best data scientist for their business or for their research lab or for whatever project they happen to be working on. Um, so although um, the term unicorn is used because unicorns are considered to be mythical, I would argue that unicorns can exist, but only under a certain set of circumstances. So one of the diagrams you often see used to represent the different facets of data science is this one. Because data science is not just about writing code, it's not just about computer science or software development. It's about writing code that analyzes data. So that requires mathematics, statistics, data handling, and for interpreting those data and extracting valuable information from them, you really have to understand the data you're working with. And that requires subject matter expertise, which is usually referred to as domain expertise in data science. Now, there's a common misconception that data science and machine learning are basically the same thing. But as you can see from this diagram, machine learning is actually only one small part of data science. Now, to be a data scientist, you don't need to do all of these things. You don't need to be an expert in computer science and an expert in statistics and an expert in machine learning and an expert in some particular subject. You can be a data scientist and work in just one region of this diagram, that you're still a data scientist. The unicorn sits at the overlap, the confluence of all of these different aspects. So a unicorn in principle is someone who can do all of these things at an expert level, which to me suggests that unicorns can exist, but they can only exist within their own domain because that subject matter expertise is the key thing that most career data scientists may lack because they have to move between domains to apply their expertise in different areas. But for those data scientists who do move between different subject areas, that may not make them a unicorn, but it doesn't mean that their expertise isn't useful because many of the techniques that are used in data science are translatable between different fields. Which is why it's one of those kind of career paths that allows you to work in many different areas. So a good example of this in research are the three areas covered by the Dara Big Data project. Now, Dara Big Data was founded as part of the Square Kilometre Array project, or to support the development of communities to use the Square Kilometre Array radio telescope. And the reason why data science is important for the SKA is that radio telescopes, modern radio telescopes, are big data machines, and they require a significant volume of data analytics in order to extract scientifically valuable information from the data that they collect. And given the volume of data that we receive from radio telescopes these days, the techniques that we use are the same techniques that get used across different areas of data science. For example, machine learning. So one of the things that radio telescopes are used for is for examining populations of different astronomical systems that tell us about how the universe was formed and evolved. Now, those populations of objects don't come ready prepared. So when the telescope looks at the sky, it performs a survey. It images a large area of the sky. And from that large area image, all of the interesting objects have to be identified, and then they have to be classified in order to put them into the right population for the right analysis. Now, that kind of data science typically relies on the same kinds of machine learning algorithm that you use for image recognition on, for example, Google image search. So it's often based on, for example, a convolutional neural network. And that's what you can see here on the right-hand side. This is an example of how you might use a convolutional neural network to extract different areas of interest, so identify objects in an image, and then put those through a classifier to form an astronomical catalogue. Now, for telescopes like the SKA and the new Meerkat telescope in South Africa, the data sets are so large that that kind of analysis can't be done by hand anymore. It can't be done by eye. And so there need to be algorithms in place that can automatically identify and classify all of the objects in our astronomical images and automatically generate catalogues of those sources, including their classifications. Now, that kind of analysis already you can see the parallels to other areas because convolutional neural networks are used in many different areas of life. But there are some fields where the analysis methods are more similar than others. And one of those fields is in sustainable agriculture. So, for example, the telescopes that we use to look up at the sky work in very similar ways to the satellites that we also use to look down at the Earth. Not only are they image-based, but they also use spectral analysis, so different frequency bands. And so the analytics tools that you can use for astronomy analysis are quite analogous to the tools that you can use for example, mapping crops on the surface of the Earth. So measuring crop yields, for example, or if you wanted to look at studies that help with natural disasters, so measuring floodwater extent or measuring earthquake damage. Those kinds of analyses rely on very similar techniques. And so the Dara Big Data project also works in sustainable agriculture because we believe that sharing the skills between these two different fields can be valuable and help advance both of them at the same time. A third field that also employs very similar data analytics is medical research or medical imaging research. And in fact, there's a very long history of interaction between radio astronomy and medical imaging. Some of the first imaging algorithms that were used for example, MRI scans, so magnetic resonance imaging, and tomographic medical imaging were actually developed through radio astronomy. And in fact, the techniques themselves built upon the principles of what's called Earth rotation aperture synthesis, which was a technique that was developed in radio astronomy. But to give you a more up-to-date example of some similar data analytics, and this is a much more specific example than I showed you for agriculture, you can see the image in the top right here. Now, this is a CT scan through someone's chest. So this is going vertically through someone's chest and we're looking down on it. And what you can see here, this is the spinal column and this is the heart. And the lungs are these dark patches either side. And you can probably see that there's this sort of circular feature here and another one here. Now, these are the aorta. So this is where it's ascending through the heart, and here's where it's descending. Now, this particular CT scan comes from a lung cancer patient. Now, one of the complications for lung cancer patients that affects their treatment is the presence of calcifications in the aorta. And those calcifications are what you can see in white, forming the circle here and here. So that's not the aorta itself, it's a calcification on the inside of the aorta. So one of the things that lung cancer researchers are very interested in is automatically detecting and measuring aortic calcifications from these kinds of CT scans. Now you can see that whilst it is kind of a circular shape, it's a patchy circular shape, so it's not the simplest thing to extract from what is quite a complex image. And so the machine learning techniques that have been developed to do this are very specific to that kind of morphology. However, it's also a morphology that we find in astronomy. And you can see at the bottom here, I've zoomed in on an aortic calcification. So you can still kind of see the circular shape here. And on the right-hand side, this is what's called a gravitational lens, which is an astronomical phenomenon that's caused by the bending of light due to gravity. And whilst astronomers want to extract gravitational lenses from their images, medical researchers want to extract aortic calcifications, but the algorithms that can be used are very similar, especially in the cases where, in fact, the measurement itself has also been made in a similar way. So again, the Dara Big Data Project is also working with medical researchers to understand how we can develop and translate techniques between radio astronomy and medical research, as well as agriculture. One of the other things that astronomy, agriculture, and health have in common, apart from the similarities between the way the data are measured and the way the data are analysed, is that these days they're all fields where there is a huge volume of data emerging. And that data is not only large in size, it's also highly complex, containing lots of different types of information. And in many cases, it's coming in a very rapid time stream. So, for example, radio astronomy looks at what are called transient objects, so astronomical phenomena that happen on very short timescales. And for that, the data has to be analysed in real time. And there are many other applications where the same thing is true. So these are all examples of what we would call big data these days. And in fact, the Square Kilometre Array telescope is probably going to be one of the biggest big data machines in the world. It's so huge in terms of its data rate that it's been described not only as big data, but as extreme data. So what do we mean when we say big data? It's again, like data science, it's a term that we probably hear a lot. It's a bit of a buzzword. And it's not that old. So the term big data first came from a management consultancy report by a company called Gartner. And they said that big data is high volume, velocity, and variety information assets that demand cost-effective, innovative forms of information processing for enhanced insight and decision making. And this is what often gets abbreviated to the 3 V's of big data: volume, velocity, and variety. So big data is not just having a lot of data, it's also about the type of data you have and how rapidly those data are arriving. Now, those 3 V's hide a lot of complexity. So if we start with the sort of the simple breakdown of the 3 V's, which are that when you're working with big data, you need to be able to deal with large data sets, you need to be able to deal with fast data, and you need to be able to deal with combinations of data, then really that means that there's a whole pyramid of infrastructure that you need in order to do that. From a research perspective, the first thing you need is computing. So if you're dealing with large volumes of data, especially if you're using machine learning, you're going to need a suitable computing infrastructure to support that analysis. And that can take many forms. So one of the ones we're most familiar with these days is cloud, which is one of the most widely used commercial options for computing with big data. But depending on the problem, you may find that high performance computing, HPC, is best suited for your problem. High throughput computing may be the best option. And whilst cloud is a particular type of platform, grid computing is also very effective for many different types of data analysis. So that computing doesn't only have to take one form. Having access to heterogeneous computing is quite useful on occasion. But if you've got some computing, then again, you need to be able to do something with it. And that's where the data science comes in. So data science is part of big data, if you like. It's the bit that allows you to take the information out of the data. And without it, you can have all of the data you like and all of the computing you like, but without the data science, you're going to be stuck. And again, that data science itself is broken down into many different aspects. So here I've highlighted machine learning, statistical analysis, and one aspect that often gets forgotten, and that's data wrangling. Now, data wrangling, which is the process of making the data suitable for the problem that you want to analyze, is probably the most important step in most data science. And if you're working with real data, data wrangling is what's going to take up most of your time. But that time investment is definitely worth it. And one of the reasons that that time investment is worth it is because often the value in the data science comes not from the algorithms or from the code, it comes from the data set. And certainly in terms of business value, many data-based businesses these days are valued on the value of their data, not on the value of their software. And I think that's summarized in this quote from James Governor, which I really like, who said that data matures like wine, applications like fish. So if getting your data correct is so important, you may be asking, what is a data wrangler? Well, the data wrangler is the person who does all of the preparation. Now, they may be the same person who writes the code to do the analysis, or they may be someone completely separate. A data wrangler can be a career in itself. And again, it's a multifaceted thing. It has multiple components to this job. So data wranglers will clean the data, they will edit the data, they will collect the data, they will curate the data and make it available in forms that can be used for analysis. Don't underestimate how important that is. They will perform any pre-processing steps that are required to go into the analysis. And for problems that require more than one source of information, they're also the people who will fuse data sets together. So all of these different steps are absolutely essential for extracting the maximum amount of information possible out of your data set and your algorithm. But I'd also like to share with you another quote, which I think is quite telling. And the quote is, torture the data and it will confess to anything. And this quote encapsulates the potential for misuse of data in data science. Misuse of data and misuse of statistics. When you have such huge volumes of data as are being produced by scientific facilities or by commercial entities like Facebook, Google, those kinds of things, then there's a massive potential for misuse of that data. Now, that misuse may be intentional, you'd hope not, but it may also be accidental. Which is why I wanted to end the talk by talking about responsible data science. So, responsible data science to me is not simply about publishing your results, it's about making your results reproducible as far as possible. Now, historically, that's been quite difficult because uh, how do you get hold of someone else's code? How do you get hold of the data? How do you reproduce someone's results? And even if you get the data and the code, how do you make it work on your computer? So there are a number of different aspects to reproducible data science. But these days, fortunately, there are quite a lot of tools to help you. And I've highlighted a couple down here. I could have added some more logos, maybe I should have done. But hopefully everyone recognizes the symbol on the left, which is the GitHub symbol. So open code repositories are incredibly helpful for reproducing results. But as I said, open code won't necessarily run on your machine if you don't have the correct environment. So containerization techniques such as Docker or Singularity, which is the symbol on the right, are also very, very important these days. And then when it comes to accessing the data, the principles of fair open data are to make it as open as possible. Now, sometimes it's not possible to make your data accessible to everyone. If your data is, a petabyte in size, that's literally impossible for most people to download onto their local machine. But if your data is of a suitable size, if it doesn't have privacy issues, then I would urge you to make it open. And again, there are tools that can help you with that. So things like the Zenodo data repository allow you to host your data publicly online. And not only do they allow you to host it, but they'll also give you a DOI for your data so that people can cite a data set directly. So it doesn't need to be in a publication for your data to be cited. And I think that's very important. So I hope that this talk has been helpful, useful. Perhaps you knew it all, perhaps it's all new. Um, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy the hackathon. And I would like to thank the partners for the hackathon, including the Office of Astronomy for Development and IDEA, who provide access to the LiFu cloud. And I wish you all a happy hack.